If game companies aren't willing to make new versions or sequels to their classics, especially strategy games which all these suits seem to think no one wants to play them, then damn it, I'd have a remaster of these classics at the very least.
Storm clouds gather over Europe.
Anyway, let me start things off with something I predicted before the announcement of Medieval 3, that Creative Assembly would release a remaster of Medieval 2 Total War, as they announced Medieval 3 was in the works. Medieval 3 happened, but the Medieval 2 remaster didn't. At least an announcement of it didn't happen, but really they should. It's still a game that's very popular with fans, beating the player count of some of their newer, lesser successful Total War titles. Shocking, right? Goes to show you how the mighty have fallen. Creative Assembly of course knows this, which is why they knew the only right decision was to announce Medieval 3.
Yes, Medieval 3 is real.
And appease the historical Total War fans. Medieval 2 is still a great game to play to this day, with a ton of mods that give the game a lot of flavor, fixes stuff people found annoying, and overall extending the life of a game that is 20 years old now. And making a remaster shouldn't be a tall order really. I mean, it's not easy, but surely if they could remaster Rome Total War, with the help of Feral Interactive, and Med 2 is of course based on the Rome Total War engine, so they absolutely could do this. I only ask for modern resolutions, better textures, better lighting, well, better than what a mod could do. A new foundation for new mods to be ported or developed for this Total War classic. I'm a simple man with very simple needs. I don't want any reworking. Heck, keep the UI even, I'm fine with it. I just want a prettier Medieval 2 that looks more up to date. I mean, we're not going to be getting Medieval 3 anytime soon, right? So it's the perfect time to get a remaster done on Medieval 2. So fans of historical Total War can show those Warhammer fans, look, we've got peak Total War right here. Do you agree with me? Go ahead and give this video a like. The next game on this list is a favorite of mine that I don't see too many people talking about it these days, but World in Conflict is one of the best RTS games ever created. Okay, it's an RTT, a real-time tactics game, but it's the best there ever was. Developed by Massive Entertainment before they became a Ubisoft studio, World in Conflict was a graphical showcase that was used heavily to promote Nvidia tech back in the day, before they went all AI on us.
We have another announcement.
It's also an online multiplayer game that lets you control a handful of units. You were part of a larger army of human players and you played the role of either armor, AI, infantry or support. And I gotta admit it, I was a pretty awesome armor commander. I mean, hey, I'm pretty crappy in a lot of these competitive RTS games, but World in Conflict wasn't one of them. I could almost instinctively predict if my location was going to be bombed. Basically, you never want to stay still in any location and you want to zigzag a lot, and that's what I did. The multiplayer was brilliant, loads of fun. Maybe things got a bit repetitive after a while. You know, playing the same map over and over again. It seems like matches would go through the same phases of like, oh, this bridge is going to get bombed to hell. And near the end of the match, a nuke is going to be dropped exactly right there to maximum effect.
It's on the way.
But you know, there were also amazing moments of tough pushes for a control point or two at choke points and stealing the win from the enemy. It's not just multiplayer though that I truly enjoyed. World in Conflict also has a single player campaign that was taken straight out of the plot of the movie's Red Dawn. You know, the whole Soviet Union has invaded America narrative. I believe that was a huge inspiration to the developers making the game.
Yes, this is Captain Bannon. I'm trying to reach the Major. What?
It was a pretty linear campaign, sure, but the setup for these missions and some of the characters were really great. World in Conflict was supposed to be released for consoles, but that plan was dropped after the release of an expansion, and the game was essentially put in cold storage as Activision, which took over Vivendi, also put Massive Entertainment on sale. Ubisoft bought them, and the rest is history. So the chances of a remaster for World in Conflict, not so great, I gotta admit. I wouldn't trust Ubisoft in bringing back the old strategy games they own, unless it's live service or something. You know, Massive Entertainment is also now dedicated to making live service games, like the Division franchise. World in Conflict is a long forgotten back catalogue which I suppose in Ubisoft's eye is considered to be a failure. They never released a console version, so that would signal that it underperformed when it was under Activision. But this is one of those games that I wish we got a remaster, because I know a World in Conflict 2 sequel would be too much of an ask, really. While those folks at Eugen Systems have put out the War Game series and Warno recently, which looks like it's somewhat the same type of game, but those aren't quite like World in Conflict, which I'll admit is a bit more simpler. It's a more simpler experience, perhaps arcadey even. I think World in Conflict would have a much more broader appeal, potentially, than a more complex war game style game. And with the resurgence of the RTS genre lately, I think a World in Conflict, a smaller action-focused online game, would be awesome for getting those that, may not play a hardcore RTS into the genre. The Command & Conquer remasters was great. Now EA, can you please remaster your other classic, Command & Conquer Generals? Since you unceremoniously killed the Generals 2 project, the least you could do was to make Command & Conquer Generals refreshed, new and amazing for new players and modders. There's something about these Westwood RTS games. They've always had a certain quality I don't see in other RTS games that try to copy the same-ish formula. But I suppose Westwood were really good at making asymmetric factions that fought rather differently. I mean, this goes back to the days of Dune 2, the way Ordos, Harkonnen and Atreides were different, to how GDI and Nod were not just opposite ends of the spectrums in terms of ideologies, but also in the way they fought. Maybe they weren't the only ones great at asymmetric factions. Yes, I know Blizzard, the main competitor to Westwood, was also great in that. One thing's for sure though, they did the explosive action in an RTS perfectly, years before any other developer managed to make them feel so, I don't know, what's the word, punchy? Westwood was the Michael Bay of RTS games, and Command & Conquer Generals, while not developed by Westwood in name, well, the studio was assimilated into AA, but basically it was the Westwood team making it. Together with 0 Hour, the expansions for Generals, we are looking at a metric ton of content that, even if you've done playing them all, there are also a lot of community-made mods. I've got to mention the Generals Evolution mod, which looks rather good. Still not finished, mind you, but it is still being actively developed. Adding in better special effects, the explosions look even more glorious, new units, maps, mechanics, they are basically expanding and improving on Generals. And we can expect there to be quite a number of mods, since in 2025 EA released the source code for Generals and its 0 Hour expansion. Technically, a remaster could be done by fans, which is good news. and also bad because I think it might take a while or never happen at all. It does seem that the old Generals engine, I believe it's called the Sage engine, has been deprecated by EA, which makes sense, it's an old game. But I also highly doubt if EA will even revisit this engine to make a remaster. People have moved on. So while the possibility of an EA-made remaster seems rather slim, it is entirely possible that they could either contract it out or the community will eventually make its own definitive edition of Command & Conquer Generals. Anyway, this game and its community is a space I'm very eager to follow closely. There's bound to be some interesting stuff developed by the community with the source code now available publicly. So I'll check out some of these mods and maybe make a separate video about them. If you're interested in that, do mention it in the comments below. I know what you might think about Peter Molyneux, and yes, I said it myself, you can't trust that man. But one thing you can trust is the quality of his earlier games, like Dungeon Keeper. An absolute classic. No, Dungeon Keeper is not an acquired taste, okay? It's not an interesting experiment that never quite hit the potential of being an amazing game. I'm looking at you, Black and White. But Dungeon Keeper was an excellent strategy game that twisted the formula of good versus evil on its head. It's a management game at heart, but very easy to play. You click on the walls to expand and slap around some minions to get them to work. It's an easy game to get totally addicted to. You can't help getting attached to those quirky little creatures, very evil creatures, mind you. The way they make their odd little noises. Very cute, but evil. But there's also a bit of that British humor aspect to Dungeon Keeper, even in the tone of the narrator that talks to you about your next mission. Now I know we got Dungeon Keeper 2, which made the move to 3D, and there was that game War for the Overworld, which was the closest thing to a modern Dungeon Keeper. But those aren't the good old classic Dungeon Keeper numero uno. I would love for EA to go back to this classic game and make the textures sharper and play on higher resolutions. Yes, that's all I ask. This is a game I don't want anyone messing about with how it plays. It plays great, thank you very much. Heck, it'll probably play better than that trash that is Dungeon Keeper Mobile. A travesty of a game that ruined the franchise. Anyway, they probably made a ton of money on that mobile game. Let's just admit that. Oh, and whatever you do, EA, don't get Peter Molyneux on board the remaster project. That's probably not a very good idea.
I tell you, it is so completely different.
We got a Company of Heroes 2 and then we got Company of Heroes 3, but nope, no thank you Relic, I just want a Company of Heroes 1 remastered. I think there's a good chance they are probably already working on this. Since leaving Sega and going independent, Relic has stated they are going to focus on 3 things to make smaller experimental games with a quicker turnaround. They'll continue to make those big budget blockbuster games they normally make, as well as returning to their back catalog to refresh and remaster them, like they recently did with the Warhammer 40k Dawn of War Definitive Edition. So a remaster indeed looks to be something that could be on the cards. Company of Heroes celebrates its 20th anniversary this year, so what better way to celebrate this momentous landmark by re-releasing this classic RTS in glorious remastered state. Sure, you could say the Company of Heroes franchise has been a rather iterative series that has improved in sequels. This is especially true in terms of the multiplayer offering. Arguably, Company of Heroes 2 is the more popular game played online these days, but Company of Heroes 3 is, following a little closely. But I do love the Company of Heroes campaign. It felt like you were playing the Saving Private Ryan sequence of the beach landing as a commander that's orchestrating some of the squads, and the quality of the unit models in cutscenes were unlike anything we've seen in previous RTSs. Very impressive stuff that you could see the expression on characters. That's not really a common thing in RTSs, by the way. And add the opposing front content, the new expansion that adds new campaigns, new factions, the defensive-minded British forces. This is as perfect a World War II themed RTS could get. Oh, and I forgot about the Tales of Valor, the second and final expansion to Company of Heroes, which adds some shorter campaigns. This was a pretty mixed bag of a campaign, but it added some pretty neat mechanics like ideas like direct control. You could control a tiger tank manually, and there's some stuff about managing squads outside of the missions. It's an okay expansion. I didn't play much of it, frankly. You could install Company of Heroes today and you could still see that it's a good looking game. This is what great art design does. It makes a game look timeless, like it hasn't aged. But it does look a bit blurry and not as sharp as the newer Company of Heroes. But yeah, I'd love to revisit these classic campaigns in Company of Heroes in ultra high definition textures and improved lighting and all that jazz. Perhaps even improve the already amazing sound design too. It's one of the most immersive RTS campaigns hands down, and remastering this would be incredible for a lot of new gamers who may have never played Company of Heroes. That's my pick for old games that deserve a remaster. A lot of these are quite challenging to do, I'll put it that way. Some certainly have a higher chance and some others are almost like lost games hidden in some vault somewhere, left to rot in our memories of how brilliant they were back in the day. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I highly appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'm looking forward to making more videos sharing with you all the cool things I love about strategy games, so stay tuned for future videos. But enough about the games I want remastered. Tell me, what games do you wish were remastered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really like to know. Thanks for watching and farewell, friends.